Have you ever wondered what lies behind the glittering crowns and majestic portraits of Europe's royal families? The truth, as it turns out, is often far more disturbing than the fairy tales suggest. Welcome to Arcane History Hub, where we peel back the velvet curtains of history to uncover its darkest, most unsettling truths. If you're drawn to stories that your school books dared not tell, then stay with us. Because today, we're delving into a chilling chapter of royal history, the story of how Europe's most powerful families destroyed their own bloodlines in the name of dynasty. This is the twisted tale of the most inbred royal families in Europe. To understand this story, we must go back to a time when kings and queens didn't marry for love. They married for power. In medieval and early modern Europe, royalty believed their blood was sacred. To preserve that divine bloodline, they often married close relatives, cousins, uncles, nieces, sometimes even siblings. These weren't accidents. These were calculated moves intended to consolidate power, wealth, and alliances. But nature has its own laws. And when those laws are defied, the consequences are grim. Let's begin with one of the most infamous examples, the Habsburgs. The Habsburg dynasty ruled much of Europe for over 600 years, controlling Austria, Spain, the Holy Roman Empire, and more. They were among the most powerful families in history and also the most genetically cursed. Their obsession with dynastic purity led to generations of intermarriage. By the 16th and 17th centuries, Habsburgs were regularly marrying their own cousins and uncles. Some family trees are so twisted that a person appears multiple times as both ancestor and descendant. The consequences became undeniable with the birth of Charles II of Spain. Born in 1661, Charles was the final male heir of the Spanish Habsburg line. He was so inbred that his pedigree chart forms a genetic nightmare. His parents were uncle and niece. His grandparents were first cousins. His great-grandparents were siblings. Charles suffered from severe physical deformities and intellectual disabilities. He couldn't speak until age 4, couldn't walk until age 8, and was described by courtiers as having the mind of a child into adulthood. He was also sterile. His most infamous feature was the Habsburg jaw, a massive, protruding lower jaw that made it difficult for him to eat or speak properly. It was a genetic hallmark of the family, worsened by generations of inbreeding. Charles died in 1700 without an heir, bringing an end to the Spanish Habsburg line and sparking the War of Spanish Succession. One man's genetic decay plunged Europe into chaos. While the Habsburgs are the poster family for royal inbreeding, they weren't alone. The Bourbons, rulers of France, Spain, and parts of Italy, were also no strangers to cousin marriages. King Louis XIV of France, the Sun King, married his double first cousin, Maria Theresa of Spain. Their children, weakened by the shared gene pool, suffered high infant mortality rates. In the Spanish Bourbon branch, inbreeding persisted even after the Habsburgs fell. The early 18th century Bourbon kings continued the tradition of cousin marriages to maintain Habsburg-Bourbon alliances. This created a cycle of genetic vulnerabilities that affected monarchs well into the 19th century. Russia's Romanov dynasty avoided some of the worst cases of deformity, but inbreeding still left a deadly mark, hemophilia. Hemophilia is a blood disorder that prevents clotting. It can be inherited through royal bloodlines, and that's exactly what happened when Queen Victoria of Britain unknowingly passed the gene to her descendants. Through marriage, Victoria's granddaughters carried the disease into several European courts. One of the most famous victims was Tsarevich Alexei Nikolaevich, heir to the Russian throne. Alexei's hemophilia was so severe that even minor injuries could become life-threatening. His condition was kept secret from the Russian public. In desperation, his mother, Empress Alexandra, turned to the mystic Rasputin, whose influence over the royal family helped fuel revolution. The Romanovs' fall wasn't solely due to genetics, but the fear, secrecy, and mysticism surrounding Alexei's illness certainly didn't help. In Prussia, the ruling Hohenzollerns also intermarried extensively. One notable example is Frederick William II of Prussia, who was the product of a first cousin marriage. The Prussian dynasty prided itself on order and control, yet behind palace doors, the same flawed logic of preserving power through blood played out. While the Hohenzollerns didn't suffer as visible deformities as the Habsburgs, medical records suggest increased rates of depression, anxiety, and neurological issues in later generations. As mentioned earlier, Queen Victoria's descendants married into nearly every royal family in Europe. Her daughters and granddaughters brought the hemophilia gene to Spain, Germany, and Russia. Her grandson Leopold, Duke of Albany, died from a brain hemorrhage at age 30 due to hemophilia. Another descendant, Prince Friedrich of Hesse, died from a minor fall. In Spain, Prince Alfonso and his son both inherited the disorder. Victoria's genetic legacy turned a recessive gene into a royal plague. Ironically, the grandmother of Europe became the unintentional spreader of a deadly inheritance. Knowing the risks, why didn't Europe's royals end the inbreeding sooner? The answer lies in power, paranoia, and pride. Marrying commoners or foreigners outside noble circles risked diluting royal blood and losing political leverage. Royal marriages were diplomatic tools, not personal choices. And once the pattern began, it became difficult to break. With each generation, the available pool of royal candidates shrank. The fewer the options, the more closely related the matches. In essence, royal families became genetic prisons. Today, historians and geneticists can analyze royal bloodlines using modern tools. Studies show that Charles II of Spain had an inbreeding coefficient of over 25%, the same as if his parents had been siblings. His genome wasn't just damaged, it was collapsing. These discoveries help explain not just physical deformities, but also infertility, mental illness, and high child mortality among Europe's elite. Some of these findings come from genetic studies of royal remains. In 2019, scientists sequenced the DNA of Tsar Nicholas II and his family, confirming genetic disorders in the Romanov line. Other studies of Habsburg graves have revealed skeletal deformities consistent with inbreeding. The age of royal inbreeding is largely over. Modern monarchs marry for love, or at least for headlines, and bloodlines are no longer seen as divine. But the damage done over centuries still echoes today. Some modern royals still suffer from chronic illnesses traced back to historical genetic entanglements. And perhaps more hauntingly, these stories remind us that even those with unimaginable wealth and power were not immune to the basic laws of biology. They thought they were preserving perfection, but they were building dynasties of decay.